So today's unpopular opinion and hot takes video is going to be a little bit different. This one was allowed to be about any Robin in history. Now, obviously, the main ones we're going to see is ones of Dick Grayson, Tim Drake, Jason Todd, Damian Wayne, but I'm sure we'll see a little bit of Carrie Kelly, some Stephanie Brown, and maybe somebody else. Now, there's a lot of comments on this post. I'm going to try my best to pick some of the best ones available. I'm sorry if I don't get to yours. These posts have been getting a lot more comments as I make more of these videos, so I do appreciate everybody who does take the time to comment. But with that being said, let's get into some of them. The first comment I have to start off with here is so good, and I'm sure a lot of people will view this as an unpopular opinion in certain aspects. I personally don't, but here's what it says. RhinoMachinima says, nobody wants to admit this, but Tim Drake is literally everybody's favorite Robin. What I mean by that is people usually like Dick, Jason, or even Damian more as a character, but they like Tim as Robin more because Dick is better as Nightwing and Jason is better as Red Hood. I feel like the only one that can really stand up against that fact is Damian, since he doesn't have another persona, but I feel like most people would pick Tim. Tim was Robin in the Nightfall Saga, No Man's Land, Hush, etc. Basically, the best 30 years of Batman had Tim as his Robin. He was the Robin in the Lego games and the Arkham games, the animated series, the Young Justice seasons 2 to 4. Damian really can't compete with that yet. So I have to give a small round of applause for that one because Tim Drake is my favorite Robin of all time. It is very easy to look at Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and say they are now Nightwing or Red Hood. Because of that, because I like those characters so much, they're a better character than Tim Drake, which immediately means they must be a better Robin. When you think about it, if there is somebody who has perfectly embodied the persona of Robin the best, it would be Tim Drake, because Dick and Jason went off to be different things, different people, different personas. The entire ideals of who their characters became a lot different than Robin, whereas with Tim Drake, he has always remained Robin. Yeah, you know what, maybe from this point of view, Tim Drake isn't the most exciting one of them, because when he stops being Robin, he just becomes Red Robin. He doesn't really change all that much. Dick and Jason, in their own ways, grew up differently. And you're right, Damian is the only one who has remained Robin the way Tim Drake has, but yes, he still can't compete because he hasn't grown out of that Robin stage, and even still, the fan base is very 50-50 on him. Some of us like him, some of us don't. And to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, we see so much Tim Drake, believe it or not, and so much media. Why is it that some people still have a higher love for someone like Dick Grayson or Jason Todd over Tim Drake? And it's actually this comment here that's very interesting. SR Striker says all the Robins look too much alike, that they could be confusing, and that someone would put 2 and 2 together, that they are all Bruce Wayne's sons. Now, I know you mean more so from the deduction of who these characters are within comic books, but I'm going to take it from the perspective of how Robins tend to be drawn and how they are made in other media like shows, cartoons, video games. Very often, the Robins look all too similar to the point where a Tim Drake Robin could be a Dick Grayson Robin and you would have absolutely no idea. That could be a reason to say, even though that is technically Tim Drake Robin, I still see it more so like Dick Grayson Robin, and my knowledge from the comic books comes into play. Even while watching or playing these things, I still prefer Dick Grayson. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just the way I see it and the way people make their decisions on the Robins, even though Tim Drake is the most prominent one that we've ever seen. Now, there's 2 comments here actually about Stephanie Brown. One from SpookyKeys. Everybody says that Tim is the most underrated Robin, but nobody brings up Stephanie. She deserves that title. I mean, her dad is Cluemaster, the most iconic Batman villain of all time. And also from Lionel Cardona, Steph doesn't deserve the hate she's gotten for her stint as Robin. I think the biggest problem with Stephanie Brown and why almost nobody remembers she was Robin, because I'm going to be honest with you, there are a lot of times where I even forget she was ever a Robin. And I think the biggest problem with it is because I do not believe that the writers had in mind she was going to remain Robin for a prolonged period of time. I don't think it was ever a plan to actually even make her a Robin in the first place. It just fit the specific story that they were trying to tell in the moment with war games and everything like that. I think the point of Stephanie Brown was to always make her spoiler. I don't think Robin was ever a real game plan in their deck. And maybe what I'm saying is the unpopular opinion. Maybe I am wrong. However, that is kind of how I get over the fact that she is no longer Robin, or the fact that nobody really cares about her version of Robin. Hungry Almighty. DC should have just kept continuing Tim as the main Robin instead of introducing Damian. Now, although I like Damian, the unfortunate reality for Tim is that as long as Damian exists, there's nothing special about Tim. Dick Grayson is the first Robin, Jason Todd is the Robin that died and came back to life as an anti-hero, Damian Wayne is the son of Batman, but what's so special about Tim that stands out compared to the rest I listed? He did have something that stood out, and that was that he was the current Robin, that is until Damian came along. And that also leads to a similar comment from Bruin Sports, who says, Tim Drake is 10 times better than every other Robin, but is discarded because he doesn't have a unique trait. Dick Grayson was the first Robin and became Nightwing. Jason Todd died and was resurrected to become one of the best anti-heroes in comic book history, and Damian Wayne is the son of Bruce Wayne and a trained assassin. Tim Drake is a great detective and fighter, which makes him a much greater character, and him finding out Batman's identity all by himself is a chef's kiss if he only got the recognition he deserves. I think what both of these comments really come down to is that unique trait. Dick Grayson is that prodigal son. He's the first boy that Bruce ever took on. He is the boy who saw his parents die, yes, not in the same way that Bruce Wayne's did, but both by different factions of criminals, and both being boys who saw their parents suffer death. Jason Todd was pity. He felt bad for the boy. And then to have that boy die, to come back and almost be against every moral that Batman upholds, that's another tough proposition. Damian Wayne is the literal biological son of Bruce Wayne. He's a top-end trained assassin by Ra's and Talia, and is in line to take over the league. That, in a way, is almost his greatest test, to teach this young boy to become a better young man. Tim, yeah, what does he really have in connection to Bruce? He doesn't really have anything that ranks up to what the other three have. I think something should be written that would maybe connect him to Bruce Wayne a lot more. I think he should have something very heavy that brings the emotional attachment of two characters closer together, because then maybe at that point, Tim would be appreciated a lot more. I don't have an idea for that at the moment. Maybe it takes a better writer than I am. As much as I like Tim Drake, I'm actually not a huge fan of the Red Robin persona, because I think the problem with that character is it almost feels as if Tim can't move on. It's almost as if he is so attached to Robin that all he decided to do was make a slightly different costume with a different looking cape and to put a color name in front of Robin. He is so tied down by that secret identity, he can't let it go. And he needs to be written better after his mantle of Robin is over. Baloo. You definitely don't like this one, but Damian is the best Robin, and I don't see anyone else who'd be better to be the next Batman. Nightwing has the whole F Batman thing going on. Red Hood and Tim is just boring, I'm sorry. Damian is the best choice, plus most interesting Robin as Robin. Dick only gets good as Nightwing. Jason as Red Hood, and Tim is never good. I mean, you're right. I don't necessarily agree with the Tim slander, even though I do agree that they don't write Tim all that well all the time. However, this is the whole point of the video. It's unpopular opinions. We don't have to agree, but I definitely do respect this. What I will agree with is I think you are right. Dick and Jason heavily get more interesting when they become their new characters. But I think a lot of people will look at Dick Grayson as Nightwing, say this character is so cool. Because of that, he is my favorite Robin. And I mean, you have a point with Damian. Wouldn't the son of Batman technically be Bruce Wayne's go-to to taking up future mantles of whatever role Batman needs filled? In ways, when Bruce passes on the legacy and needs Batman to continue, would he not want his son to be able to take that mantle? I mean, for any one of us, if we were in these positions and we had children, we raised these boys and girls, we made them into the people we wanted them to be, and they became good people because of our teachings. It does make sense. Weirdly enough, as much as I do not like Damian Wayne, I don't think it is a bad option that sometime far in the future, he could be the next Batman. Because at that point, hopefully, Damian would grow up from who he used to be, and he would have all the proper teachings of his father and even Alfred. So we got two other comments on another Robin that hasn't really been seen all that much other than in one continuity. Sewergoose, not a popular character, so I don't know if it's unpopular opinion, but Carrie Kelly's Robin story is completely ridiculous and doesn't fit into Batman's return to crime fighting for the first time in years. And Blatherskit Studios, Carrie Kelly, worst Robin. So these were like the only comments that I believe actually mentioned something about Carrie Kelly, and it's very interesting because she is by far the most unknown or even arguably forgettable Robin that we've ever had, even more so than Stephanie Brown. And that is mainly because she doesn't necessarily sit within the main continuity. She's an Elseworld story, but an Elseworld story I absolutely love. Yes, Carrie Kelly becoming Robin in The Dark Knight Returns probably does not make all that much sense. And was her character really needed? Probably not. I mean, this is a Robin who is relying on using slingshots with stones to take down her enemies, while Batman is getting bloody and muddy in a mud pit, breaking the bones of the mutant leader. I mean, it's it's a very interesting vibe that Miller decided to write in that book. Sometimes I wonder if Miller was adamant on having a Robin in that story to the point where he wanted to kind of change the perspective of who Robin is and what they can be. If it is necessary that a Robin be an acrobatic crime fighter who can almost do what Batman does just at a younger age. I don't know if this was his way of saying, I want a female Robin and this is what I want her to look like. I don't know if he has ever commented on why he did what he did with Carrie Kelly's Robin. And if he did, maybe let me know in the comments below what he had to say about it. But realistically, if I were to ever make a story like The Dark Knight Returns, I don't think Carrie Kelly would belong in that world. I just don't think that is something a 50, 60-year-old Batman would be prioritizing in the time. I feel as if the story of The Dark Knight Returns is very reliant on something Batman needs to do himself. He's at that age where he's coming back to be Batman in a time where coming back as Batman might be harmful for his own survival, but he is so blinded by that he thinks he can do it all on his own. He doesn't need anybody else. I don't mind Carrie Kelly. I don't think she's a bad character, in my opinion. However, siding with the comments here, yeah, I don't think she is necessarily a needed character. Concrete. I've always thought that Tim should have been included in the Under the Red Hood storyline along with Nightwing. That story is front and center about the relationship between Bruce and Jason, but it's also about the partnership between Batman and Robin and the consequences that could come of it. We don't really see how Tim and Jason react to each other's existence, and when we do, it's not done as effectively as it could be. We know how angry Jason is about the Joker not being dead, but imagine how much angrier he'd be that Bruce would never even consider bringing another kid into his crusade. How does Tim handle the pressure of his predecessor being dead and trying not to make the same mistakes he did, and then have to face the fact that he's not only alive, but has become something else entirely? Tim is looking at Jason and Dick as two sides of the same coin. They both departed from Bruce in very different ways, yet what they have in common is that they disagree with Bruce's methods to some extent. Whereas Tim is with Bruce, all the way, and therefore his ultimate successor. But seeing Jason test that resolve would be fascinating, and then seeing those three's bond grow over time would be all the more satisfying. Fantastic idea, really good, and I think that's true. It should have been done. I think one of the best interpretations we've actually had of Jason being angry at Bruce for moving on from him and taking another boy to be Robin is actually Arkham Knight. He says, "You forgot about me. You left me, and you got somebody else to fill my spot as if I was just a soldier. Did I really mean nothing to you?" From one point, you could say that Jason has a jealousy for Tim. It is more so a hatred for Batman, because how could you do something like that? How could you not avenge me in any way? How could you stop thinking about me? How could you forget about me? And when you look at Dick Grayson, a lot of the times, and I don't think enough people really think about this all that much, yes, Bruce taught him everything he knows. From the basis of who Dick Grayson is as a person, did Batman truly teach him to be the man he is today? Because when you look at Dick to Bruce, they're very different people, almost to the point where you would never know Bruce raised that boy into the man he is today. Dick Grayson, as Robin, saw Batman, Bruce, going down a particular path he would not want any part of. He got out of town as quickly as possible, went off to Bloodhaven. For Jason, his arrogance, his cockiness is what brought him to where he is today, getting tortured, killed by the Joker, resurrected, and being turned into this hateful, spiteful man as Red Hood, who now takes lives, whether it be for good or bad reasons. The question is Bruce Wayne actually a good father figure? He taught all of them how to protect themselves and how to protect the people they love and how to take the fight to criminality. Tim being the third in line, you would think at one point he is standing on the sidelines and observing both Robins that came before him and said, okay, how do I deduce the relationship those two Robins had with Batman without Bruce telling me the truth? Because Bruce does not talk about the past. He'd rather move on and move forward. If Tim were to be like, what happened with your other Robins? Bruce's response would be, don't worry about that, keep training, get back to work. That's not what we're here to talk about. As much as Bruce loves these boys, and as much as he sees them as his own children, he's not the best of fathers because he is so focused on bringing justice to Gotham City that it does get in the way of actually being a father. And you could even maybe have moments where Red Hood cornered Tim Drake, and he's basically talking to him through the shadows, trying to convince him Batman is a bad guy. He does not care about you. He's only using you. And now it's up to Tim Drake to battle those thoughts and ideas. Who should I believe? Jason, the Robin that came before me, who clearly has a reason to hate my father? Or should I listen to Bruce, who has taught me and given me everything that I need to be who I am today? We always do think about the relationships of Batman with his Robins, but I think there is something to be said about the relationships of the Robins together, even if they are no longer Robins anymore, even if it is Nightwing, Red Hood, and Red Robin. There is a very thick connection between those characters, even if they don't outright say it, because they all share the one most important thing in common, which is their father, Batman. So now for my unpopular opinion. This goes for all Robins in the sense that I think there should come a day where Batman no longer has a Robin. So he started, let's say, the first 2 or 3 years of his career alone. He had no Robin with him. All of a sudden, and this number can be played around with, let's say the next 10 to 15 years, he more or less at all times always had a Robin. I wouldn't even have brought Damian Wayne into the picture. And that's not even so much because I don't like Damian Wayne. That is actually more so because I think 4 Robins is just way too much. even the Bat family, as much as I do like them, I think there are actually way too many members. It's a little too convoluted. They all have their own things going on. It's hard to keep track of, and how there is still crime in Gotham City with all these people is baffling to me. I think what should happen is Batman's time with all of his Robins, Dick, Jason, and Tim, were all filled with good moments, bad moments, and some in particular, Jason, terrible moments. Third time's a charm. You gave it a shot with Tim. Things were okay for a time, but Tim ended up leaving too, and I think it would have to come to a particular point where Batman says, I can't keep recruiting these kids to dress up as Robin and fight crime with me every single night. Even Alfred, knowing how level-headed that man is, he would one day sit with Bruce and say, hey, if you want to keep being Batman, we ain't stopping you, and I'm always going to be here to help you. But to get a fourth child, girl or boy, to be Robin, to fight crime with you again, has the past 3 times not told you or taught you anything, Bruce? It does eventually have to come to the point where Batman is just solo again. How many times does he have Robins and literally refuses the help from Robin because he'd rather do the job on his own? Sometimes Robins are literally just there for placeholders. Yeah, Batman works with the Justice League, but he usually only does it when there is a dire situation where he's needed for that particular mission. Even too, when you watch Batman media, especially the movies, that is why very often they don't bring Robins into the picture, because Batman can be a more interesting character when he is alone than when he has to team up with Robin. Hold on, because I know a lot of people are going to be like, what? No, that doesn't mean I don't think there shouldn't be a movie with a Robin. I think it would be really interesting to see how they would handle that. But overall, I just think there is far too much baggage that actually comes with the Robin role. I think it can work for a certain amount of time. I think it is even needed for Batman's character to progress in certain situations, but I think every single Robin should move on to be their own character, like a Nightwing and a Red Hood. Also, there should be no more Robins after 3, because I already think 3 is the cap. So there you go, everyone. Unpopular opinions on the Robin character. So as per usual, if you did not get the chance in the community post, let me know in the comments below your unpopular opinion or your hot takes on any Robin character. Comment other characters we can do unpopular opinions on. I have a list and I will add them to that list. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.